I just want to point out that Jim Crow laws were like, they were all things that whites could do that blacks couldn't do. Okay, that was the big thing. Like, a white could just go in, show his license or proof of identification, and vote. And blacks had to take a little test. How many windows are in the White House? Those things. That's a Jim Crow law. You know, it is obscene that everyone is talking about this as a Jim Crow law. It is not a Jim Crow law. By the way,
it's not. It's a Jim Crow law on steroids.
See,
if it was just Jim Crow, I don't even think it'd be notable in today's Republican Party.
I have some thinking on this. For instance, the voter ID. It's racist to get voter ID. You have to have ID to vote, but it's not racist for corporations to say if you don't have a vaccine passport, you can't come in.
Or like a bank to say you need an actual ID to open an account.
By the way, in Georgia, there are 8,000 people in the whole state of Georgia. There are about 8,000 people that don't have an ID. You know how you can vote? Bring in something like a utility bill. Your cable bill.
There's 13 different steps. And even if you have none of them, you can still cast a provisional ballot.
Unbelievable.
But I mean, we're talking about utility bills and you know, work IDs and, by the way, a free identification from the state. I mean, they make it incredibly easy, and anyone could get it if they actually put any effort into it. Anyone.
It's really truly.
Assuming you're actually a citizen.
The drop boxes that were put in by Facebook.
Yeah.
Those are suddenly now permanent, I guess. That's what everybody is saying. A Jim Crow law is one that says, oh no, the things we did because of the emergency COVID now always have to be in there.
And of course they are, like for the emergency vote box thing. They had a bunch of them. They now have them still. They're just putting them inside instead of unguarded outside for 24 hours a day. Right? Like, so, I mean, is that a Jim Crow law on steroids?
Well, okay, so can because I have an idea of steroids. I have an idea. Yesterday, I mean, when you think of steroids, you think, right?
Right. It's like,
Hulk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, no. I yesterday went in to get another back injection of steroids into my spine. What do steroids do? They shrink the inflammation. So if this is Jim Crow laws on steroids, it's shrinking the problem. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
I'm sure. You know what?
Right.
That is, you found it. I think that's what they're saying.
I mean,
they're not just lying.
Even the New York Times said, this is not, and any of these changes are not going to, let me see if I can find the exact, permanent features. Hang on just a second. Oh, crap. Where was it? Here it is. Georgia new voting law suggests that laws may make in-person voting easier, especially in the general election, and that voting provisions are unlikely to significantly affect turnout or Democratic chances. That's the New York Times analysis. And I'm hearing people like, what's his face? Well, I've always really liked Will Smith. It's Jim Crow law. That is offensive. Every African American should be offended by that. That's like the Tea Party. Oh, you know what? I can understand what Martin Luther King was going through. No, you can't.
Right.
No, you can't.
Yeah, it's totally different. And it's like, you know, the ADL does this all the time. They come out and, like, if someone compares something to the Holocaust,
right,
they make it their business to come in and say, you're not allowed to do that. We need to remember the Holocaust for what it was, and you shouldn't be comparing today's things to that. Okay, well, that's okay. I mean, I understand that. It makes some sense in some circumstances, but like that's what they're trying to do here. You know, I mean, and it's really a bizarre thing. I mean, it does minimize what Jim Crow actually was.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah. If this is Jim Crow, then what were people yelling about?
The 2022 will be the most easily accessible for voting in the history of Georgia, with the exception, potentially, and this is arguable, but the potential exception of the pandemic year when everyone was at home and and they had a bunch of new emergency rules that were put in. You could argue it's slightly tighter than that, although I think you could argue the opposite too. But you could argue it's slightly tighter than that. It's definitely more easily accessible than 2018.